Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another day here at Reach and Reverie. My name is Alex, and today we are going to have our very first garden tour for 2025. This year has been super sweet in the fact that we have our own property. Josh and I bought 5 acres 11 months ago, and we are closing in on 1 year as property owners here. And I feel like we have had a lot of projects, a lot of moving parts, and this is the first opportunity I've had to really stretch out and grow the garden of my dreams, a huge gardening space comparatively to what I've done in the past in town. And so it's been a lot more work, and it's also been a huge example of being able to express gratitude and thankfulness for the spaces that I have to garden in. That being said, this year I do feel really behind on my garden, and I think it's going to show in our garden tour today. You may notice I'm wearing a sweater today, long sleeves. I've got long pants on, and it is after sunup this morning, and it's 46 degrees outside. Today is May 10th. It is a very unusual year, full of setbacks. We planted out this garden quite a bit later than my typical time to plant out a garden in the past. I usually shoot to start my seeds indoors around the week of Valentine's Day. We ended up having our first greenhouse blow away this year in a storm, and I had to largely start over starting seeds about a month behind this year. Additionally, I usually get my garden in the ground around the 3rd week of March, and here we are the 2nd week of May. I've had my garden in the ground about a week and a half, 2 weeks in some areas, and everything's just a little bit small. But that's okay. I'm really hoping that this video can be an encouragement to other gardeners out there that may not have a very large garden at this time. Maybe their plants are also kind of around the stage mine are, and that is totally okay. Here in our zone 8B, we're in far western Texas. We live in the Chihuahuan Desert. We have a very long growing season. So even though we're having a little bit of a late start, I'm still feeling hopeful and confident that our garden will catch up in a lot of ways. And there will be things that grow really well out here. The other thing that has been really unusual this year has been the weather and the wind, which I guess is also partly weather. I can remember this weekend 3 years ago, it was 115 degrees outside. This week, the high is about 70 to 75 degrees, so it's just a lot cooler it has been. We also got our last frost on April 5th this year. Typically we get our last frost in March, and so it was just kind of, it's been a really cool spring. We've also had a lot of wind this year. It's been unusually windy. We've been asking around with the locals because partly Josh and I were thinking, did we just buy a really windy piece of land and we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into? Looking at our property here, we are surrounded by mountains 360 all the way around us, and we are on a flat in the valley in a bowl. And so we were thinking, okay, are we on the flatlands where we get all of the wind? Just looking at the land around us on the horizon, you can see mountains all the way around. So Josh and I were kind of thinking, is it the land we picked that it's so windy? But I can remember even living in town, we didn't have wind like this in years past, and asking the locals, they also have confirmed, no, it's been a very windy year. We typically get high winds in western Texas in the month of March and in the month of November, and here we are, May, still pretty much on a daily basis getting wind advisories, wind warnings, and having to take shelter for dust storms blowing through at least 2 or 3 times a week. And so it's been extremely, extremely windy, which I think has also just been excruciating. That being said, I feel extremely blessed with my garden. I know this is year 1 with the soil, so it's only going to get better in the 2 and 3 years to come as the soil develops, and our plants will only grow better as the years come. So before we even go into the garden, I wanted to show you, we've started our cottage garden. This year, Josh and I got this in the ground last weekend, and everything is still alive so far. So they are strong. It's kind of funny, the day that we planted our cottage garden out, we got a huge windstorm, and I had to come out here and cover everything with buckets because I'm thinking, this is a great way to welcome you guys to our property, get you in the ground and get blasted with dust, right? So right in the front of our garden, Josh and I have our first stint in the cottage garden right here, which we're so excited about. Our cottage garden, we do plan on planting ornamentals, also things that may be medicinal, but we're trying to mostly plant things that are going to be more deer resistant, as we have a lot of wildlife in here. We also have a lot of rabbits. We have 3 different species of rabbits that live on the property. We've got black-tailed jackrabbits and 2 types of cottontails that live here. And we specifically have a family of cottontails that have taken up residence underneath of our RV and are just loving coming right outside the front door and mowing all of the plants down. So in our cottage garden, we're planting things that are going to be a little bit more resistant to wildlife, and we want to really plant things that are mostly perennial, but also things that are going to just be absolutely beautiful as they grow and develop. And so our cottage garden is going to stretch out. We have a circle drive right here in front of the garden that kind of goes around the house and then up our driveway and out of the property. And we're going to have our cottage garden stretch up to the circle drive, and it's going to come to a point over here at the end of the garden and come back. We do have a little bit of a drive so we can pull things up to the front of our garden. So this is going to be essentially like a little road right here. But this whole area will eventually be filled out, and then we'll have a little walking path, and then this whole area up to that tree and to this tree and back is also going to eventually be cottage garden. And we have our ATV parked in front of our bed as the wind was blasting through here. So this is just a wind block for our little plants here in this section. Evie, back up. Thank you. Thank you. We don't step in the garden beds. Except me. I can step in the garden beds. In this section, we have red flowers, yellow flowers, and white flowers, and they kind of pair really nicely with the way that they're spaced once they grow up. Almost everything in this section is going to get 3 to 5 feet tall and wide, except for potentially that ponyfoot, which is a ground cover. We have canna lilies right here, and these guys, he was absolutely beautiful when I planted him, and you can see some of the wind damage that he's got. So I'm hoping that, I know he has really big leaves, I'm hoping he can get strong out here with our winds that we have. We have an African bulbine, which is native to South Africa. They're really drought tolerant and heat tolerant, so I thought this would be really good in our cottage garden. It has died back on all of its flowers when I planted it, but we're getting some new flowers opening up, and they have really beautiful orange and yellow flowers that brighten up this space here. I have an Artemisia that's doing really good. I love these feathery silver leafing on this one, and this will again also grow really big and wide. I've got 2 little foxgloves that I've planted, these little tiny things. These I started from seed, so they're quite a bit smaller than everything else, but they will also grow several feet tall and have flowers that are just absolutely beautiful. And foxglove is toxic in all parts, so I'm hoping the rabbits will leave it alone. I have a native Chihuahuan sage, which has really beautiful silvery tinted leaves, and it's going to have white flowers. Most of these really tall ornamental silvery sages that people like to plant out here have purple flowers, and so the Chihuahuan sage, even though it's native, it kind of sets itself apart with its beautiful white flowers that it has. So that guy's doing pretty good. He's even put on new growth since we've planted him, and so I am hopeful that he's going to get really big. This thing can grow like 5 to 7 feet tall and wide, and so I'm hoping he will fill out this area really nicely as he grows. I have an autumn sage, which is a different kind of sage that stays a little bit smaller, more like 3 feet tall and wide. And this one has red flowers, and their red flowers, they're getting ready to open up a new round. And he's doing okay too. I think he's gonna make it, even though we got blasted with wind this week. We just kind of put them through their own kind of welcoming home party with the wind. I have a yellow daisy over here. This one I'm not too sure about. He's always really, really gorgeous in the mornings, and then he does not like the full sun. And so I may have to put up some kind of shade for him because he kind of wilts in the afternoon and then comes back each morning. But he, I need to probably deadhead him, take off all of these spent flowers. He, has a lot of really beautiful flowers that he puts off, just yellow daisies. So we'll pull these off so we can encourage him to pop up some more flowers, which you can see he's got some buds. So we'll get another round of flowers out of him for sure. And then over here is my little silver ponyfoot. This is Texas native. There's actually different kinds of ponyfoots around Texas. This one has silvery leafing, and it's a little bit more drought tolerant and heat tolerant. There's also, like in Central Texas, really bright green without the silveriness on the leaves that grow in Central Texas as well, and other parts of Texas. And I'm sure these are also native in other states as well, but I absolutely love silver ponyfoot. It will be perennial, where it will probably die back on the surface every year during the winter, but the roots can stay alive. And I've had these come back before, and every year they just spread out farther and farther. And he has the potential to just cover the ground in this whole area when he gets going and gets really established. And we will add more pockets to our cottage garden. That is something that we can go back and continue to add to as the years go by, or throughout the year. There's no hurry in getting that space filled in. She knows where we're going. Gonna go ahead and lock us in before the wind kicks up. I love this gate that Josh has made for me. He built the gate and he just blew with his torch holes and added a bent piece of rebar as my gate latch, and it's totally unique and I love it. Welcome to my garden. Isn't it lovely? So much growing here. I'm just kidding. This is the side we haven't started yet. So this side of the garden, and right now it is being shaded by the greenhouse. We are actually planning on taking this greenhouse down soon, as we have planted out the garden. The only reason I haven't yet is it is somewhat of a wind block to the garden. And as you can see by the morning shade it provides to this half, it does provide afternoon shade to the other half while our plants are really young and still getting started. We have a plane taking off. We do live in an area where there are lots of helicopters and planes coming and going, so now that that plane has flown over the mountain, we can continue. What? This half of the garden Josh and I plan on working on in the summer. It's going to mirror the other half that we're about to get to, and we hope that we can get this planted out in time for the fall garden. So I hope that, my hope is, and I know we have a lot of projects going on, that we can get these garden beds put in hopefully by August or September. That way we can get some fall and winter crops going, like our root vegetables and brassicas going in this side, so that we can kind of phase out the summer garden and phase in the winter garden by the end of the year. Now, right as we come into our front gate, I do have a dream that this arched trellis over the gate will one day be covered with beautiful blooms and flowers. And so with that being said, we have to plant some plants, right? So that we can have things growing up these arched trellises. So right now I have what looks like a bird nest, right? And so we have a lot of mulch in here, but I've separated it and I've added some potting soil so that we can get some seeds started. Underneath of this, we do have tilled with native ground and compost going down about 2 feet and then backfilled in. So there's some really rich ground under these sections underneath of the arched trellises. And what I've planted here is chocolate vine, which produces flowers that smell like chocolate. I'm trying to get Josh to want to come into this garden, you guys. So I couldn't think of a better way to welcome him into the garden than chocolate scented flowers. But another cool thing besides the novelty of the chocolate vine is that it does provide edible fruit, even though the fruit is somewhat odd looking and I bet the texture is going to be a little weird. I thought it would be a really neat thing to grow. So we have a chocolate vine, which I think I have one coming up right over here. I've also planted in clematis, and so we have 2 types of clematis seeds that we're looking for to come up, and I'm not sure, that may be a clematis right there. It's too soon to tell. I've never grown clematis before. I've seen it, but I don't know what the cotyledons look like, so I don't know if anybody can tell me if that looks like clematis or some other weed. I've also planted in here a couple of annuals, like a couple of zinnia seeds and a couple lupines, and also a couple of toothache plants, which is a daisy family that will completely numb your mouth if you put the flower head in your mouth. And so I planted some annuals with the thought that the clematis might not come up right away, and so that way we could still have some beautiful things and medicinal things growing in that space. Looking into the research on clematis, we did stratify the seeds, but they say that it can take several months to germinate, and because I've never grown it before, I didn't want this bed sitting empty. So we went ahead, and chocolate vines coming up, waiting on clematis. I think we have a couple zinnias that are already coming up as well on this side. So that'll be really neat to see develop over the years. The 2 types of clematis we have there is a double pastel pink, so it'll be a really beautiful light pink blossom, and then I have a white clematis with purple in the inside of the flower, which will be also really striking if it can grow. And now we can take a look at our garden that we have all planted out. I'm growing in ground in a sunken bed system this year, where we have dug down about 18 inches into the ground and then backfilled up about 12 inches with a 50-50 mix of native ground and compost. And we did go back and amend it with perlite, vermiculite, and worm castings. I've also added bone meal, and we have mulched over the top to help retain moisture and prevent having to water quite as often. Before we mulched, I was literally coming out here and watering every single day because of how much evaporation there was in the desert. We have really, really low humidity out here in far western Texas, and combined with the high level of wind we've been having, it has just been wicking off all of the moisture from the ground and dehydrating our plants. It feels like our plants have been put in the ground to be living in a actual dryer or a dehydrator. This garden, instead of being a really nice home, it has in some cases been a dehydrator, which we don't want. Our first row of beds that we planted is along the fence line here at the front, and this is the section that we have not mulched, and that being that potatoes like to be a little bit drier, and I've noticed that our clay native ground holds a little bit more moisture deeper down, and we didn't want the potatoes to get rotted out. And And so we have potatoes and some onions growing in these first 3 beds. And I think the potatoes are doing pretty good. I do think I'm going to come back in and either pile up a little bit more dirt around them or potentially add something lightweight like straw that the water can seep through a little bit better than the mulch. But our onions are doing okay, and the potatoes I think are doing fantastic. The second bed behind me is arguably the bed that I have been most excited about. I love growing tomatoes. There have been years where my tomatoes have grown more than 10 feet tall, no exaggeration. And so I've prepared this T-post and cattle panel trellis going down the middle of this bed so that these can reach their full potential and get as tall as they want to. They just got put in the ground a couple weeks ago, so they are still really small, but we have seen some growth on them already, and I'm hopeful that we will have a good tomato year this year. This is my wee tomato bed. We had started about 60 tomatoes on this row. We have lost some to the wind and just getting acclimated. I did harden off my seedlings in all of this space, but there's only, I feel, so much hardening off you can do when you throw them into an environment with haboobs and dust storms, getting sandblasted. So the ones who are still really beautiful and green are our survivors, and I feel like these would be great candidates to save seed from, as we know that they are strong plants in this garden. Josh and I did play around this week with the idea of trying to put up some kind of shade cloth low to the ground to act as a windbreak. So if you have any ideas for wind protection that are low budget, because we are kind of in our low budget era right now with all of the other projects that we have going on our homestead, this year we have played around with the thought of adding like a 3-foot tall screen the whole length of this bed, where we could have like 8-foot sections that we could roll back so that I could get in and harvest, but then also extend and maybe clip so that it can provide a little bit of a windbreak, as a lot of the wind that we get comes from the south. So on this bed, we have a lot of different varieties of tomatoes. I don't even know how many varieties I started this year, but just walking through, I'll name a few and you can see a closer look at some of our tomatoes. I haven't even pruned them yet. I'm gonna wait until they get quite a bit taller to start pruning off the suckers. Typically, the way that I grow these is I'll grow them up as 1 or 2 main leader stems, and I'll pluck off all of the stems that start growing in their elbows. So looking at this tomato right here, this little guy is gonna be a sucker that we would pull off so that he can put a lot of his production into that main stem and growing flowers along those. And this guy, he's already got some flowers, so maybe we'll be getting tomatoes soon. So here we have a white currant tomato. I also have Queen of the Night right here. So these are some cherry and saladette style tomatoes. We have Get Stuffed, which is hanging in there. They're a little bit smaller. They struggled quite a bit. We do have a couple of Get Stuffed that didn't make the transition. I have popped a marigold in a spot where one of the tomatoes have died, because marigolds are great at deterring pests in the garden. And so we'll have something growing here, even though the little tomato next to him didn't make the transition. I've got some Black Beauty. They seem to be a little bit more on the robust side in this garden. And I also have Lemon Blush, which has been handling the transition better than a lot of other varieties of tomatoes. So this is my first year growing Lemon Blush, and I'm already really liking it, where the leaves have been really nice and dark and thick, and it has not really skipped too much of a beat with the transition into the in-ground bed. I felt so bad planting these guys out and then the wind storms coming over, but at some point you've got to sink or swim and put them in the ground. So Lemon Blush, I'm hopeful, will be a great new addition to our garden. He's really squat and robust, growing thick and slow, so I feel like he's going to be doing well with the wind. I have a couple more Black Beauties in this bed, and then we also have a couple of Dr. Witchies. My Dr. Witchies is also one of the ones that's standing out as doing really good, growing, not really set back. I don't see a lot of wilt or disease, droopiness. He's standing nice and tall and consistently continuing to grow after putting him in the ground. And then down the way we have Sartre Roulois, which is looks like he's the biggest tomato so far in the garden. Sartre Roulois, it's a yellow tomato that has blue blushing on its shoulders from the anthocyanins in it. So this is going to be really nice having some Sartre Roulois growing in the garden. Really beautiful, beautiful low acid fruit that also is really rich in antioxidants. And then coming down the way, I have some large barred boar, which are not very large. This little guy specifically, I planted him when he didn't have but one set of true leaves, and he's putting on more leaves and growing. So I think he's going to be a good survivor, but the other large barred boar are hanging in there. And then down on the end, I have Buratino, which performed really, really well. It was actually my best tomato variety last year when I was growing in town in the city. I say in the city, our town is rural and really not even a city, but when I was growing in city limits, the Buratino did great. It's a real thin, lanky, long tomato that grows really large paste style, like ox heart shaped tomatoes, but it's not been doing very good in this garden. And I think that's because it's so thin and lanky that the wind has been kind of brutal to these Buratinos. So I may come back in and add some staking and support so that they can get up to the height where we'll start tying them off to our support trellis and panel right here. But Buratino, I was hopeful he would do good. You can see he's getting a lot more leaf curl. His leaves are all like upside down. He's kind of like, oh, what's going on here? On the other side, I have a couple of unknown varieties. These are seeds that had survived when our windstorm happened, and the seeds fell into other pots and were not correctly labeled. So this tomato right here was labeled as a canary bell pepper, obviously a tomato. So I just put a label that says unknown variety, and when he fruits, we will see what he is. He has a really nice light yellowing, and he's kind of robust. So I'm almost going to go with thinking, my prediction is that he's going to be a lemon blush, but we will have to stay tuned and see when he fruits what he actually is. And I planted his companion, the canary bell, over here. We have a marigold again, and then I go into some other varieties. Castelluto Fiorentino is always a really healthy and robust tomato. So I planted one right here. We have another large barred boar section. Orange Jazz, that's another first for me this year. I've never grown Orange Jazz before. We've got Jersey Devil, which is kind of performing like the Buratino. Jersey Devil has pepper shaped tomatoes where they look kind of like long and skinny little torpedo shaped tomatoes. Black Beauties over here did not survive the transition. Chihuahuan Desert Star also didn't, but again, a lot of our wind comes from the south, and so on this side of the row, I feel like they got hit a little bit more with dust. We have more Blue Beauties and Amish Paste on the end, and the Amish Paste is another one that I'm really hopeful for. He has transitioned really well into their in-ground beds, and they are also putting on flowers, so hopefully we'll be getting some Amish Paste here very soon. At the end of this bed, I did plant some herbs like broadleaf sage, echinacea, and bee balm, and we're hanging in there. Our third row from the end, we have quite a bit of things that are doing okay, but we're hopeful that we'll start doing better as we go along. In this bed right below me, I have ground cherries, which I've been so excited about. I haven't grown ground cherries in a couple of years, but the ground cherries here are really wind blown or wind burned. You can see a lot of their leaves are dying back. We do still have some growth. I am going to come in and fertilize the whole garden probably today or tomorrow, and hopefully that will help perk them up a little bit. But I feel like they were hardened off enough that they didn't get sun damage. But when we came through with our dust storm recently, which was really sad and unexpected, a lot of the seedlings in this space are starting to wilt on the edges. I think that they were just dehydrating and getting a little bit too wind blown in this area. That is the case also for my eggplants. My Listata Degandia are doing okay, but my little fingers, I think, have struggled a lot with the wind that we've been having. On the other side, I do have cantaloupes like Charente, Sweet Passion, and Heart of Gold. I have a lone little peanut over there that is popped up. We'll see if I can get some more peanuts to grow. But in this section, I have direct sown okra seeds. I sowed them once and they really weren't coming up. And then I've mulched over this and I've created little pockets and that I've put some potting mix into, and I'm hoping that we'll have some better success. I did soak my okra seeds for 24 hours in warm salt water. So I'm hoping that that will also help them germinate as well. Next down, I have a little herb section here where we have catnip and salvia, blue sage, and some thyme. I have my tomatillos right here, and the tomatillos I've had mixed success with. I feel like they've originally were doing really well in this garden space, but as time went on, they have not been faring with the wind really well. And so I do have support stakes to a lot of these, and I do have some that are doing better than others, and then we have some that have not made it at all. So with the ones that are not doing really good, I'm probably going to direct sow seeds next to the dead ones and see if we can get some more like later succession germination. On the inside, that's going to grow up over the trellis. Here we have cucumbers such as Sakim. I believe we have dragon egg and Boston pickling. Over here we've got our summer squash. I have a couple of hollyhocks there in the middle and marigolds, but we have some different summer squash, including gray zucchini, ronde de Nice, Ford hook zucchini, jaune et vert, which is a scallop squash, and honeyboat squash as well. On the end, we've got more tomatillos. And then inside, we have gourds that are having some mixed success. I do think that these gourds are starting to come back. I was starting to give up on them. We have the birdhouse gourd, also known as sugar bowl. And then we have loofahs over here. Our little loofahs. And this loofah I think is doing pretty good. He's starting to grow vertically. This one is starting to die back with all the wind. And you can see we had a huge thunderstorm the other day, and with the dust combined with the thunderstorm, everything is coated like in a little layer of mud. So the next time I come and water, I'm going to try to wash off that mud from all my little plants. We do have on this row, we have some lemon cukes and cucamelons, or Mexican sour gherkins. Mexican sour gherkin grows a small cucumber that's about the size of a grape, and it has a little bit of a citrusy flavor and note to it. I absolutely love cucamelons. And then we have some bush beans that we have planted on the backside. This is all of our peppers from the end of that trellis to the start of this one. We have, and I'll just name a few, ají cachucha, cayenne, chotachero, Brazilian starfish, buena mulata, peperoncini, corbaci, cubanelle, habanada, shishito, pekin, jalapeno peppers. We've got Hungarian purple and brown jalapenos. We've got a large variety of bell pepper types and the blot pepper. And our peppers, even though we've been getting down into the 40s this week, which is not good for peppers, they have actually been doing really good. No complaints for the peppers. Out of all of the transplants here, I think we've had one mortality. And so really good success and survival rate on our peppers so far. And some of them are even starting to put off little flowers. So really, really happy with the peppers. And our Armenian yardlongs and snake cucumbers, they're actually considered melons, but we eat them as cucumbers as their flavor is more cucumber-like. But what's really neat is that since they're melons, they are a lot more heat resistant than cucumbers. In a lot of instances, when you try to grow cucumbers, when the weather starts getting hot, they get a really bitter flavor and they don't do as well. The Armenian yardlong and snake cucumbers perform really well even through the heat and hotter months. So I could already see these guys are looking great. We have more beans planted behind, and wherever I've planted direct sown beans, I've added the mulch in a thinner layer. I want the mulch to be able to have some extra water retention here. We want to make sure that the water's not evaporating off right away when we water, but I did just a real thin layer of mulch so that the beans can still come up through. And I've had to re-sow beans here because our first round of beans did not come up. We think that the soil surface was creating a crust when there wasn't a mulch here, and it was making it harder for those seeds to break through the surface. Next over, we have a little square right here where I've planted out basil plants. I planted out lettuce leaf basil, some dark purple opal basil, and cinnamon basil. And this was unfortunate. So the basil I am arguably also most excited about. There's a lot of things in this garden that I'm looking forward to growing, but basil we use a lot of in cooking, a lot of in teas. I like to add it to iced drinks like lemonade in the summer. And so with the basil, I've planted probably 21 plants throughout the garden space, 16 of them being in this section. I've planted a little block of them. And right after I planted these, we got hit with a dust storm, a windstorm, and it has effectively dehydrated about half of the basil plants that were in here. The lettuce leaves seem to be the strongest ones, and the cinnamon is hanging in there really well, but most of the purple basil has just completely crisped up, and it did not like the transition. So I will come back and probably plant some more basil seeds in here and hope that we're getting finally past our windy season. It may be that the way the weather has been changing and some years are better than others, we may not get a whole lot of basil this year. But again, there's years where you get really great tomato harvest or really great cucumber harvest, and maybe that'll hold you over for a couple of years until you can get a really good harvest of that again in the future. With gardening, you're always learning and you're always growing with the plants. And so it might just not be a basil year this year. Over here in front of where Evie's sitting, I did plant a whole big box and block of peanuts, and we're hoping that the peanuts will do really good. I'm probably going to widen out the mulch around the peanuts once they sprout. I'm using the mulch as a way to keep the ground moist while they sprout. You could see all their little pockets in the ground. But a really fun fact about peanuts is after they flower, they actually drop their flowers into the ground and grow the peanuts under the ground. So I'm kind of wondering if the mulch is going to impede in peanut production. So once the peanuts start sprouting, I'm probably going to remove some of that mulch and let the peanuts themselves be kind of a low growing mulch layer, because the peanuts are going to grow low to the ground. I have seen where we have some harvester ants that are eating a little bit on the lower parts of our peanuts, specifically this little guy. So he has his true leaves coming out, but underneath his little like seed shell, that green part that you could tell was where the seed was, I've seen that harvester ants coming through and munching on that. So I'm really hoping that they're going to leave my peanuts alone long enough for them to sprout. And we do have a harvester ant mound right there that we're dealing with. And past the peanuts, I have some lupines that are growing and a couple of toothache plants right here, and I'm really hoping that the toothaches flower. I've grown toothache plants in the past, and they're, in my experience in our area, a little bit harder to grow as they're not quite as heat tolerant. They do appreciate some shade, and then I've just had really poor germination on the seed pack that I've had. I've grown them in the past with a whole lot of success, but I have run out since then of their dried seed, dried flowers. And so I'm really hoping this year that I can harvest some more from these little guys that we have here. And then of course I have more up front by that arch as well. In this last section of the arch trellises, I have some watermelons. We have moon and stars, and then I also have Katrina cucumbers. And the Katrina cucumber is really neat in that it produces female flowers. It's a hybrid variety of cucumber. It's great for growing in greenhouses, but it should have really high production because it is a self-pollinator. And I really love my moon and stars watermelon. It has little freckles on its leaves, and it also will have freckles on its fruit too. Those yellow spots there on the leaves will also be on the fruit as well. And back here we have some direct sown cowpeas. I'm really hoping that those will come up. I'm going to give them another week or two, and then I'm going to start planting other stuff in these spaces if they don't come up. If you've made it this far in the video, we are now to our final row that we're growing in our sunken bed system this year. We have up front, I put a little bit of a window screen as a shade cloth to some of our plants that appreciate shade. I have evening primrose over here, which is a Texas native. It's just going to be a really pretty flowering plant. I'm not planning on harvesting anything from it except potentially some seeds. And I have some hyacinth sweet peas over here, which really haven't grown a whole lot since I've planted them there. They may just be decorative this year, and we'll try again a little bit cooler next year or potentially in the fall growing those, because at this point we're kind of late in the season to try to grow these cool weather plants right here on this corner. I have chamomile and cilantro also started, and those are doing really good as well. The cilantro is something I'm probably not going to harvest from this year. Really let it get established and start harvesting it next year. And the chamomile, I'm hoping that it gets big enough to flower. That way I can just drop some seeds down at the bottom of it. But if not, again, it's something I have a whole lot of seeds of, and I have a whole lot of dried flowers from, so we'll plant it in the cooler months, either in the fall or next spring as well. In this garden bed, I have 3 varieties of corn that are coming up. We have Tana Red Eagle, we have Blue Hopi, and Glass Gem. And those corns are starting to come up. They are coming up all along this row, and so I may come back in probably this weekend or next weekend and plant some more corn just to fill in the spaces where we had poor germination. But some of the ones that are coming up are getting really strong and tall, and I'll just kind of walk down the length of this to get a closer look here. We've got some corn down at the end. We've got more that are coming up over here. I did plant the corn in blocks where they were in rows of 4 and then columns of 4 all the way through this bed, and I've kind of noticed that they're doing the best right here along this bed, and I almost feel like the bed is just slightly sloped this way, so the ones over here are getting just a little bit more water. Because of that slope, I went ahead and planted my pumpkins on the higher end because we don't want the pumpkins to have wet feet or be sitting in water. So I have them up higher where the water can kind of drain off of them a little bit, but they're also mulched really high to help. It's kind of a balance, trying to keep the ground moist, but we don't want them to rot. So we have the pumpkins on this side and the corn kind of growing on this side. We planned on doing a 3 sisters garden this year. So once the corn gets a little bit taller, I'm going to come back and try to start some pole beans to climb up of them. For our pumpkins, we have, or generally I would say winter squash, because they're not really all pumpkins. I have 2 tromboncino squash, which you can harvest young as like a zucchini, or you can harvest it later as a butternut squash. we have Seminole pumpkin, which really is a butternut squash. And the Seminole is doing really good compared to some of the others. Seminole pumpkin and Tromboncino are both really good in the heat, and they're also a little bit more pest resistant, which is why I'm growing them. When I've grown squash in the past, we've had really bad squash bugs, and so I'm hoping that growing the Seminole and the Tromboncino, that they can resist the pests long enough for us to get fruit. As I will admit, in years past I've grown a lot of squash leaves and not a whole lot of squash fruit. Next to the Seminole and Tromboncino squash, I also have 2 cheese squashes, which are a pink-skinned squash that is about the size of a round of cheese. These cheese squashes are what we would use as pumpkins. I also have 2 blue Hubbards, which is kind of an oblong blue-skinned pumpkin that can grow up to 40-pound fruit. And then we also have Jarrahdale pumpkin down here. The Jarrahdale is my other one that is standing out as really healthy. He is not minded the wind at all. He's just been really short and squat and has really healthy leaves. He doesn't show really any signs of sun scald or wind burn. So I feel like if he does really good this year, I might be planting more Jarrahdale next year. Jarrahdale is kind of a gray blue skinned pumpkin. Your shade pile's getting shorter, huh? Before we mulched out this garden bed, this pallet of mulch was like 4 feet tall, and she had learned that while I'm out here gardening, she could come and sit over here and be shaded. And of course, now that we're down to our last 4 bags of mulch, the shade is kind of going away, but she now has a favorite spot in the garden that she's already decided is pretty great this time of day. Well, my friends, thank you for joining me today on our first garden tour of 2025. I really hope that this video can be an encouragement to somebody who may be a little bit behind like me as well, or struggling through some of the elemental challenges that gardening can provide. I still find so much joy in this process, and I want to be transparent and show this journey along the way with you guys. Not every year is cookie cutter, plant, water, and walk away. Some years are going to require a little bit more work and innovation to have success in the garden, and even through your best efforts, you may see what you may call failures in different aspects of the garden. But I feel like every year is another year to grow and learn, experience, and know what does better in our zone and climate. And it has been a learning curve going from growing in town where you're sheltered from the wind and have a lot of shade, to growing out here where there is full sun and a lot of wind. So I do think that next year I will learn what did well this year and try to learn from it. And even then, the weather's probably going to be a little different. We've had a really cool, very chilly and very windy, and even in some cases wet spring this year that has been really unusual for our area. So next year, when I try to adjust to what this year's weather was, it could be completely different. Maybe next year we won't have any wind and it'll be a really hot spring. So this would have been a great year to grow brassicas and cabbages and root crops, but we were still getting our garden space installed, and so we didn't grow those things. So next year we'll see if we can have a little bit more success in certain areas. I do want to continue to show our progress. We'll see what comes of this garden in the weeks and months to come. Maybe I'll have to pull out some things and replace it with others, and really encourage and nurture those things that are doing well. So thank you for coming along and listening to all the things that I've had planted today, and you'll have to stay tuned for more, as we have a lot of different projects going on here at Reach and Reverie. It's not just gardens. We also have an orchard, and we are very soon planning on getting into meat rabbits. In the future, we'll be having some dairy goats. We also have some projects for the house and homestead along the way. We'll be building our own house here in the next couple of years, and you guys don't want to miss that. If you've made it this far into this video and you are still hanging in there as I'm walking up to the house, let me show you some of the projects that Josh has been working on this week. Evie, slowly, slowly. Come over here. Let me show you some of the projects that Josh has also been working on while I've been in the garden. He has been doing some things just around the homestead. One of them being that he has replaced all of the boards on his trailer. Some of these boards were getting a little bit gnarly. You can see his board pile over there that we're going to dispose of. But this just looks so beautiful now with the boards that he's replaced. He is going to come in probably this weekend and seal this and preserve it and get these boards painted, and that would be a good video to show you guys as well. So we'll see if we can get that recorded or if he sneaks that work in while I'm doing something else. He's been a little bit busy this week. In addition to working on his trailer, he has also finished our project of getting this rainwater catchment set up. He painted this tote so that it'll prevent algae from growing, and he also finished this gutter system that's going to drop down rainwater into this tank. We are planning on potentially pumping the water from this tank into a tank closer to the garden so that I can water with rainwater, which I think the plants will enjoy a little bit more than the well water that we've been using. But we did get a couple of rain storms passing through this week, and this is already halfway filled up, which is awesome. Josh also came through with his tractor and he loosened up. First he cleared out all of the brush that was in here, and then he loosened with his tractor this ground and has raked and sown in grass seed, and we're trying to grow some grass in this area. This is the area by our shop and our RV. And I'm really glad he's been watering this area because it means that this raised bed right here gets a little bit less neglected as well. You can see this is my little wildflower raised bed that I have outside the door. We've got baby's breath that is blooming really, really nicely. We have some flax that has come and gone. Those flowers seem to be like one-day blooms, and so we'll be getting more of those, I'm sure. We have a couple bachelor buttons that are about to open up, and we also have some sunflowers that are gonna start blooming as well. And so I've planted this space just to be adding a little bit of beauty. I haven't had the heart to really thin it out the way it should, but I do think that as some cooler weather plants phase out, we'll be getting those warmer weather plants coming in as well. Like we have a lot of cosmos in here. I also have a couple of cilantros in this bed and fennels, but cosmos are going to start coming in as things like the bachelor buttons phase out, and so that'll be really neat to see as well. Pretty cool. We've been a little bit busy this week getting the garden in, working on other projects on the homestead. But if you like this video and if you stuck around this long, thank you for hanging out with me today. Don't forget to give us a huge thumbs up if you like this video. It really helps my channel out. And don't forget to subscribe. That way you can stay up to date with everything going on here at Reach and Reverie.